Hey, Peter,
Hey, Adam.
are you old school or are you new school?
Um, you know what? I want to be new school, but I feel like I may have some old school tendencies. I think this episode might expose things. What I know I'm not is a boomer.
Ah,
I don't know about you though.
well, I went to the new school, class of 2004. Never graduated. I'm Adam Manis,
And I'm Peter Martin.
and you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Music explained and delivered.
Delivered to you via Open Studio. Go to openstudiojazz.com for all your jazz lesson needs.
Yeah.
Start your free trial today, 14-day free trial. Peter.
I want to give people a little bit of a pre-Easter egg for this episode. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay. If
it's not close to East, past Easter.
well, no, you know what an Easter egg is, though.
Yeah, I do.
You know,
Yeah.
So, in case we start to bore you with what we're talking about, I mean, that would never happen. We know that's not going to happen. But for some of you, it may happen. Just make a note of how close we're talking to our microphones.
I'm self-conscious like crazy about a couple of things, about my shirt sitting weird and about the microphone, because we were told to reposition.
Reposition our mics.
Yeah.
And we're really used to coming up on the mics, but we're supposed to be staying conscious of not being too close to the microphone.
Yeah, so
You know.
it's I feel like I'm very stiff right now. Like,
And this is a thing, singers, like, this is a big part of their gig.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like, where you're going to put the mic,
They
where
know
you're
all
going to
about
do
that.
it, whatever. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see if we kind of drift back to our normal position.
you're already closer than me.
Am
can
I?
tell. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm just trying to. Okay, sorry.
It's weird. 1,000 episodes. You gotta you're used to one way.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. What are we talking about today?
Well, we
Our
are talking.
friend?
Yeah, we are talking about old school versus new school. What does that mean in the jazz world, in the music world, in the learning about music,
Yeah.
appreciating music? I thought it would be really interesting. Some of the stuff we were, throwing around in the warm up pen, as we say, like if you're coming up playing music now. I mean, we're all learning all the time, of course, but like if you are really in those formative teenage years, perhaps early 20s, mid 20s, whatever, like what's different now about being a musician, a creative musician? What's better? What's worse? I don't want to rep us as like curmudgeons and say everything was better back in the old days, because obviously some things are better today. Internet access is better today because there was none when we were in our teens.
Zero.
But how does that affect, how one learns music, how one connects with other people? What are the connections that are needed that maybe aren't needed? What was it like when we were coming up, and what is it like for the kids today?
Yeah. I have a old friend who doesn't like the term coming up. Every time he hears it, he brustles. He's like, coming up. It feels like, oh, I was coming up. I'm like,
okay.
well, yeah, but we're just talking about growing up.
Right.
But,
Well, now they say like on the come up.
On the come up.
I like
that better.
Which means exactly the same thing.
Man, I don't know. Like, I think this could be an interesting discussion because you and I are close in age, obviously, and we come from the same place here in St. Louis, at least
Jazztown, USA.
where we started our Jazztown, USA, where we started our musical journey.
And are continuing it.
I know, but we're also a part of, in a small way here with Open Studio, we're a part of like, continuing the tradition of teaching what we know,
Right.
but in a very different format, in a format that we did not have when we were young.
No.
And I think we're always, especially here at Open Studio, as we talk about music and want to communicate music. I don't know about you, but I'm always thinking about like, what were the most impactful ways that I absorbed music when I was young and I was learning how to play.
Right.
And is there a way to recreate that in this sort of digital delivery, mostly one-sided service? So, although we'll talk about how we've kind of gotten around that, especially since the pandemic with things like Open Studio Pro and the mentor sessions and these sort of like face-to-face Zoom situations.
Yep.
And I know a ton of people do like Skype and Zoom lessons and all that stuff. But
I
think there's those differences. I think there's the difference we've talked about, at least, on my end, and I know you have similar stories of like, it was just harder to get all kinds of information. So it was harder to get information about like what were the albums to listen to.
Yeah.
It was harder to then get those albums. Like sometimes someone would be like, hey, go check out this record. And like, it was hard to find.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like physically, like where am I going to drive to find this
Yeah,
thing?
totally. And especially if you aren't in a major metropolitan area.
Yeah.
You know, I was like in High Ridge, Missouri. So I would come into St. Louis to buy records, which wasn't.
You had to gas up though before you
You
came
do
in.
have to. I mean, it's not super far, but it's like it's far enough that I couldn't go to any record shop in High Ridge. There were no record shops. I mean, there was like a Kmart,
Right.
and they usually didn't have Thelonious Monk with John Coltrane at the Kmart in High Ridge.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. But I think those kind of differences we're seeing now. What the impact is, I think. But then I think there are, and which I think are all positive. Like we're seeing, I think, kids that can play and are exposed to so many different kinds of music. But then I think there are some like interesting drawbacks too. Like there's a good chance that my daughter, who's 14, has listened to more, she certainly has more access to, but has listened to more different kinds of music than someone like Charlie Parker had access to and listened to. Right. In her short life, because she's a Spotify hound.
doubt. Right.
She like can't get enough of Spotify, and she knows all of these crazy genres and all this stuff, and she's really exposed to a lot of music. Is that a good thing to develop your own voice? Like, you know, like with your limitations and forcing you to go deep. I think these can all be conversations we can have around this topic, you know.
Absolutely. And I'm just realizing, like, a lot of times we want to break this down into kind of a binary thing. Like there's the way it was and then there's the way it is now. So like you say, for your daughter listening to Spotify, I'm assuming that there was a lot of algorithmic discovery that she's gone through. Like that's the way maybe she's finding new artists.
Yeah.
And so we think about, well, we didn't have that, but we actually did. Like think about who told you to go hunt down whatever record you were looking for that you couldn't find at the Kmart. Like that was its own form of an algorithm. You know, it was like a tribe, or it could be a cult almost. You know, if it goes if it goes dark. You know.
Well, that's the thing is you had to meet the right people.
Right, right. But I mean, there's still like, oh, this is I want to be part of this. Now, maybe at first you hear something you like, just like the algorithms work now. So, oh, I like this. And then you start listening to it, and then the algorithm picks up on that. Well, if you like this, maybe you'll like this. And it starts exposing you to other things. And then there's that discovery phase. But we went through that as well. I know for me, sometimes it was physically on the albums. Like something caught my ear about my dad's Miles Davis record, and then I'm looking at the back of it. I was like, wait, who's on this? And it says Herbie Hancock. I was like, wait, I know Herbie Hancock because I just saw him on MTV.
Yeah.
You know, you start to make but it was like you had to work a little harder. It wasn't just served up. Okay, now see, we need to ring the bell every time we do an old man boomer kind of statement. Like back in the day, I had to walk uphill to get that damn record.
So this is now the boomer bell for this episode. Okay, let's be on that boomer bell because we need to be aware of when we might be, you know, showing our boomer bias.
Boomer bias. By the way, I love that shirt today. That boomer shirt. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just testing the bell, buddy. I do like that shirt. It's nice.
Thank you.
So, but you know what I'm saying? Like there was an algorithm back then. There was,
but it wasn't so global. It was like, I know this guy Maurice, and he's telling me to go check out this album. You know.
Well,
what I mean?
that's what it was. It was just simpler. But I'm saying it wasn't as random and it was more serendipitous, but it wasn't necessarily more random. In fact, it might have even been more focused at that time because like you had to work. Oh boy, I can see myself. And the boomer
bell, buddy. Hit the
no, but it's like we had to work hard. We had to work harder. Like there is an element of easy come, easy go. Right?
Yeah, but
so like you had to drive in and get that record. You're going to treat that differently than just your daughter now on Spotify playing the next thing. Oh, I like that. Thumbs up. And then going on to the next thing, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that as listeners, that affects us, but it especially affects us. And I'm not even saying like for better or for worse. I'm just saying it's different, and it does have a different kind of trickle-down effect on an individual basis, but then for the scene, especially when you're talking about like the jazz scene where it's already very insular and probably too insulated, and like people are afraid to say certain things. It's cliquish and it's cultish, or it can be. And it can be like, this is ours, gatekeeping, jazz police, all these things. Like those kind of stay constant. Like how their manifest changes from generation to generation. But you think people weren't talking about the jazz police back in the 50s and the 60s? I mean, all those issues were there then as well.
But I do think one thing that you know, if you're younger today and you're trying to learn the music, any music, not just jazz, but anything, there is no gate really if you are into it. Like if you want to learn about it, the only gate is, can you afford internet access? That's really it. And then you can really learn as much as your curiosity can take you.
Right.
You know, whereas it could be, and actually it was intentionally gatekeepy. I don't know if you knew musicians like this, but I knew musicians who did not want to talk about, they didn't want anybody knowing their secrets, quote unquote, right? They didn't want to, you know, they didn't want people seeing them play sometimes, like what their hands were doing.
Right.
Because
there was the thing with the trumpet players where they'd like,
yeah,
you know, have the handkerchief or like have their hand over so they couldn't see the fingerings of things that they did.
Yeah. Which is really interesting. I mean, it makes sense because it was incredibly competitive.
Right.
You know, it still is competitive, but it was more of like, this is my proprietary sound.
Right.
And so maybe some people who talk about that are kind of right about like,
yeah, but those elements have also always been like, we think, oh, with the internet that busted it wide open, and even if somebody was trying to, like, the horse is out of the barn, there's nothing you can do anymore. But I would imagine when recordings started, like that changed all different kinds of music scenes, because then it was like, oh, you're giving away the secret. Someone can listen to it and then listen to it again.
Yeah,
you know, it was a lot clunkier than what we can do now, of course.
Yeah.
But even like the written down on the page, you know, like once the music wasn't like, you didn't have to be there in the moment. They looked at the written pages like, oh, we have like the equivalent of what later you'd think of as a recording. We've got a document of this, and we can look at and analyze and steal, you know, Bach's voice leading or whatever. And I'm sure that there was, you know, wasn't what that movie Amadeus was about? Like the angry, salty guy Salieri, who was like, you know, don't steal my chords that I stole from Mozart, actually, you know?
Yeah. Well, wasn't Mozart the younger one?
Yeah, well, it made him even more bitter.
Which made him, that relationship is timeless.
It's timeless, yeah. Right.
I think it's interesting, man. What about like when you were young, when you were learning the music, like what do you think were some of the most impactful lessons that you took away that kind of wouldn't happen now? Like, do you ever think about that? Like, I think about that sometimes. I think about, actually, there was just that video. This happened at Smalls. Who's the drummer? Like, kicked someone off the drum set.
No, Anthony Wanzi.
Yeah.
Kicked off the drummer.
Yeah, which is
who was sitting in.
Yeah, check out the video. It's crazy, but that was not uncommon.
Right.
Like that. Now that seems so wild.
Yeah.
But that happened pretty regularly.
Right. Around
like, you know, the BB's jam session back in the 90s or whatever.
Yep.
People were getting kicked off the piano all the time.
Right.
Someone would come in and someone specifically that I won't mention would be like, move.
Right.
And would kick them off. And it happened a lot, you know? And it was for the music, but that kind of attitude.
So you think it happened more than it does now?
Yeah.
Because it's just
100%.
People are kinder, and it's not because of the algorithm. It's because
no. It's a whole different kind of culture around. It's less, you know, like we talk about, like one of the mentors that we both had when we were younger was Willie Aikens.
Yeah.
You know, legendary tenor saxophonist here in St. Louis, and that kind of instruction, he was very direct. He cared about you.
Yeah.
But he cared about the music, and he cared about you learning the music.
Yeah.
Willie was this type of musician who always had a very young band around him.
Very much a teacher from the stage, from the bandstand.
And not like a teacher like, here's the chords you should be playing, and here's the scale that we're using. None of that. But if I was comping something that he thought was not good, he would just turn around and say tacit, meaning stop playing.
Right.
And like,
I don't want to tell you to stop, but tacit.
Yeah. And if he liked what you were doing, he would give you more and more space to do what you were doing. And so that was like the way that you would be learning. And he wouldn't cut corners with that either. Like there was a drummer that joined the band that he didn't let the drummer, who's now like a well-established drummer, but he didn't, and he was just starting out. He was a kid, he was 17. And he didn't let him solo for the first 6 months he was in the band, because he was like, you got to learn how to swing first.
Right.
You got to learn how to work the ride when I'm playing before you get to solo.
Yeah.
And that was like an incredible thing to witness as another young musician. That sort of like commitment to the music and to sharing it via, you know, here's what we're doing and here's what we're not doing.
But it's very much a form of gatekeeping.
Yeah, I think so. But there was a lot of love there too, though. It wasn't this like angry thing. It was
educational.
It was. He cared. Like I said, he not only cared about the music, but he did care about the young musicians in his band. And he just cared that we were doing things in the right quote in the right way, right? Like
Right.
we learn the music in the way that it's meant to be learned.
And it seems like it's evolved to the point where that still happens some, but not as much, and it's more there's so much more potential for difficulties with that, for like there being, you know, hard feelings and like somebody being discouraged. Although that certainly happened back then too, and not just with Willie Aiken, but with these type of like well-meaning and really masterful players that are doing a great service to the music and to the community in general. Because you're like, those are some of the most important. I mean, think of all the, you know, yourself, myself, Montez, like all these musicians that were able to benefit from that and then go on and teach other younger people and play in the community. I mean, it's got a ripple effect that's really a beautiful thing. But there's also like some people were discouraged by that, I'm sure, and like, oh, he told me to test it, I'm going to quit or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was also a time, and certainly even going back before that, there was more of it where it was just like, you know, suck it up, buttercup. You know, sink or swim. You want to play this music, you got to respect it. You've got to, and like, is that still the prevalent feeling in the jazz community? I know that a lot of older guys and gals feel that way, but it's not as acceptable to kind of be like that, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Because like the Smalls incident, there was a lot of, it wasn't like, oh yeah, Anthony Wanzi he's a great player. You know, he's in our generation. I mean, he's one of the best players out here. And I would have thought everyone would be like, thank you. And some people were, but some people were like, that's so disrespectful.
Everybody our age.
Yeah, that's true.
Who had been through similar things.
But I mean, I don't think he had anything, I don't know that whole thing. And it's funny you said go see it, because I was like, I don't, because I'm like, we don't have controversy. But this is another problem. Like people didn't used to care about controversy in terms of like somebody like a Willie Aikens wasn't thinking about like, yeah, I mean, he was actually a very gentle person in general. So he wasn't just like some stories that you hear about musicians where it's just like throwing the cymbal across the stage, like get off the bandstand, you suck, even if they did.
Yeah, no, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't like that. But he also wasn't like
I've seen that, but
right. But he wasn't gonna be like, oh, that guy looks like he's very sensitive, maybe I won't tell him to tacit. I don't think he didn't strike me as that either.
No, there was a sort of sink or swim kind of vibe, which I think is helpful as a performer.
I think now you have that in the, I think in the jazz programs somewhat. Like it's super variable amongst the teachers.
Depending, I think, on the teacher.
Yeah, but even they're like very much having to navigate the dynamic of like, especially if it's a private lesson or stuff, it's like, how far can I push? How far can I not? And look, this is really anecdotal. Don't take any of this but this is from me talking to my musician friends that are teaching in those situations.
Yeah.
Where they're like, yeah, you just have to be careful because they're at a very, very fragile time. And that was all true when we were coming up. Just nobody gave a shit back then.
Yeah, I wonder though, you know, man, one thing that I think.
Sorry, that was a
yeah. No, I mean, but we could also look at this as like, you know, yeah, like maybe there were some very good things about that sort of like direct approach.
Yeah.
But also there could have been some damaging things with that as well.
Yeah.
That like we probably maybe don't want to expose the younger generations to, and that's probably a good thing that we're past some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I do wonder though about like, and this is not just for like young people, this is for me too. This is for anybody who's living currently. Like, I think sometimes we have almost too much control over what we put out, over what our playing and learning situation is.
Yeah.
So by that, I mean like, you know, if we put out something here at Open Studio, there's a real temptation to make sure that it's absolutely spot on, perfect.
Yeah.
Before it goes anywhere. Like, and that means like we have as many takes as we need, and that means we can edit it later.
Yeah.
Like this is why when
even in this conversation now, I'm thinking like, wait, what, like you,
yeah.
For better or for worse, full transparency, we are stuck. And I wouldn't say it's all bad, but it's a reality. Like we've joked about it, like the mic's always on. Like it starts like when you're on a mic so much, when you're playing, when you're teaching, when you're having to be, you know, just like what we say, conscious of the mic placement or whatever. It's like you're always thinking, it's not like let me be careful, because I think we're very, especially in this podcast, we're super candid. This is what we believe.
Yeah.
And we've making some missteps before on things that we've had to walk back.
For
And
sure.
we very rarely edit something out. We do occasionally, we're like, you know what? Let's take that out. Not because it's not what we felt, but it could cause just strain or an uncomfortableness for us. And I mean, not even uncomfortableness. And see, there I'm maybe taking it too far.
It's
but
just
it could
not-
cause some strife or misunderstanding in our audience that is not productive.
No, that's a line that we talk about walking all the time. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, because everything is, first of all, we control everything that we put out. Right. And then also, everything we put out is available to everyone all the time.
Right.
So there's an added pressure there of like, well, we don't want to have that video up because it didn't really work, and like we didn't communicate the way we wanted to communicate.
Or people took it so much as the gospel that we didn't think, like, even we come on here and say some things like, oh, thanks so much. Finally, somebody said it. That's what I believe. And we're like, wait. We're thinking, yeah, well, we believe this, but we didn't necessarily mean that for everybody. So like we have to caveat things or say like, that's why we have our the Debossiers on a big $100,000 retainer. We're constantly checking with them.
Yeah, and it's just like sometimes we just are talking and things don't come out in the way that, you know what I mean? And it's just like,
and then it's like you're continuing to talk or continuing to play. This can get into the playing too. Luckily, it's not as much of a thing for me with that, but it does happen sometimes.
I went through the whole yips.
Yeah, where you're thinking about what you just played, but you're having to charge on, or what you just said as you charge. It's very hard to be productive and transparent and in the moment with the discussion when you're having to think about that. So yes, we have the ability to edit this, but we treat everything like it's a live, because sometimes I'll even forget, wait, are we on live? Or we go live all the time. We do whatever. Like, you have to kind of treat everything as like, this is who I am. And I mean, I try to rely on and have grace for myself and for everybody else. Like when I'm watching YouTube, like that's why I'm a huge YouTube. I love YouTube. Sue me. Okay. Talk to my attorneys down in South Louisiana, but I'm watching stuff all the time. But like, when I see anything, even if it's something I don't agree with or something that I think wasn't done well with a YouTuber that I know or didn't know, like I would never go into the comments and like try to rip them a new one. See, like I just said something. Should I have said that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just kind of came out. But you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't come and
cut that.
I wouldn't like light into them because
Melodyne that, please. Melodyne that.
Right. Like I have an understanding of like when you're here, you say, you screw up sometimes. And like part of the immediacy of this, it's so connected to like how we're trying to play music, and teach music and like be in the moment and develop your ears and all that. And part of that is like, you're going to screw up sometimes.
This is what I'm talking about.
There's people just waiting to pounce on that.
But is this for all of us? And again, this is not just a generational thing, but for all of us who are existing right now, making music in this environment. Like, I don't know if it's healthy that like everything is around all the time, because it kind of forces us to like not be able to fail. You know what I mean? Or like you really have to develop super thick skin, in order to put things out. Especially if you get just a small audience, even you're gonna get your critics. And that can be very hard. And I think your first instinct when you start putting stuff out and people start paying attention is to really make sure, okay, everything I put out has got to be like agreed upon by everybody that it's good to say, and I can't. And it's
like the social media picture of like, it has to be me at the beach with my beautiful family, all of us being so loud. And then as soon as the picture is done, it's like, I hate you. Go back to reality.
Yeah. It seems like there's not a lot of room for, especially developing musicians, to like make some mistakes and figure some stuff out, at least without all the pressure. That's what I'm saying. And I wonder sometimes, we had that whole series and we had some of the controversy around that. The OGs listen to IGs. What is it?
Let's not talk about it.
No, it was a good series. It was a fun series. It was really fun. Okay. We were just listening to like, tons of young musicians who are famous specifically on social media, kind of first and foremost. Yeah. JD Beck and Domi, that kind of thing, right? Flashy musicians. Jesus Molina, we did one on.
Jacob Collier,
we did one on, which was weird, right? Like all of these, we kind of like were like, okay, like it was just kind of like an interesting vibe I wasn't expecting. But like, I do think that like all those folks are so amazing that everything they play is going to sound great no matter, one take. But like, I think a lot of developing musicians see those people and they feel like, oh man, everything I do now has to be at that level.
Interesting.
And I just wonder if it's like, and us too, like older musicians who are trying to do stuff too, we feel that. I feel like you feel that sort of pressure of like everything you put out has to be a banger. Yeah. And I just want everybody to be totally conscious of Open Studio and notice that everything we put out is not a total banger. No, we try to, as we mentioned before, we try to leave up stuff that kind of doesn't even paint us in a great light. Like we're not super worried about that.
We don't do that great though. Like I'm just thinking about myself. Like I had a short out recently that I haven't done this style much, and we haven't even talked about this, but it was like, it was doing, I was trying to inspire with some hand independence stuff.
Yeah.
But we're time boxed into 60 seconds on these shorts.
Yeah.
Which we love that in a way. We lean into that. But part of that is like, you've got to get that information in there. And so I wanted to demonstrate this thing. And when I do that kind of thing, sometimes it comes across as, look at me, look how great I am. I'm Peter. Yeah. And I don't mean it to do that, but upon looking at it again.
Your biggest fault is you're too good.
But I'm saying, yeah, for 60 seconds. Brag. No, I'm okay. No, but I'm saying like, I don't think that's a good video. I really don't, because it's not really a performance. I'm talking. I mean, it's fine what I'm playing, but it's not like, it doesn't impress to inspire. It comes across as just trying to impress, and that's not what I meant. But that doesn't matter if that's how it comes across to somebody, because most of these videos are not being seen by just our closest friends.
I think your intention.
Well, look at the comments, buddy.
I think your intentions are relevant. And I agree.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that they're relevant, but doesn't mean they're germane to somebody's reaction that's going through and just watching it in their feed. And we could talk about, is that the problem, that people are like, this sucks, put it, and then go on to the next one. Oh, that's the greatest thing ever, love you. Then to the next one. There's that whole problem too.
But if you dig it, what does it matter what people react to? Like that's what I'm saying. Like I've turned a corner.
Because we're trying to do something specific with. Like for me, is like to inspire, to elevate the conversation, to bring some light. Like I feel like I have this love-hate relationship with social media, because I think it's so corrosive and divisive. And look, many people have waxed eloquently about this way better than I can. I mean, like it rewards controversy and arguing, and it's trolling and hate, of course, all that. And so like for my thing is like, well, I can do some things that are positive in this world. And so what's nice about it is that it can amplify some of those things. And I've done that before. You've done that. I mean, we have great success, I think, and it's one of my proudest things. And it's free. We're giving it away. But sometimes when there's videos like that to a certain segment of the people, it discourages them, because it makes it seem like, first of all, what I'm doing is not that hard. There's ways to, when you get the sound going and stuff. And
another humble brag.
No, I'm saying it really isn't. But it's smoke and mirrors. It's like I could go to the beach and put on a swim trunks. I was going to say a bikini, but that would be weird. It would be fine. But
yeah, buddy. I like where this episode is heading.
I could go put on a
ring-a-ding-ding.
Join me at the beach in Destin, big guy. No, so I mean, I could put a bathing suit on, and with makeup and actual smoke and mirrors and some photoshopping, I could look really attractive in said bathing suit.
Yeah.
By the beach, tanned and muscular and all that. And then as soon as it was done, I go, phew. And then like the reality isn't that. And I think that that's the way that kind of video comes across a little bit.
You're still Peter Martin.
It seems
man.
unapproachable, and it's not. I'm telling you, it's not. What I meant to be like is, you can do this, and like, what I kind of hide behind, and I think we do this in general. Like, at least in my mind, is that I make these shorts. We never edit, and we don't edit them at all. Like, they're done in real time.
We add things to them, but we don't do any timeline edits where we're like cutting.
Yeah, we don't start and stop, and even some of our longer YouTube videos. Like, if it looks like it's not edited, it's not edited. We don't do any like, oh, get the first part then. So I'm like, it's not going to be, and I listen to that. I'm like, it actually isn't perfect. It is. That's what I mean by it's not that impressive. It's not as like airbrushed as it could be, but it still comes across to people like that. And then it gets people thinking like, some people are like, oh, they just put that together. You can't really do that. And I'm like, I'm not even trying to make that. What I'm trying to say is like, there's fun ways that we can practice hand independence. And if you commit to this, you can get to this level. Like, I'm trying to make it approachable.
Yeah.
And like give away, like we're talking about the gatekeeping, take it away. And it comes across to at least a segment of the people as gatekeeping. It's just like, oh, well, you're showing something that I'm never going to be able to do. That's the picture. It's like, the teenage kid that's looking at the other Instagram photos and is like, I'm not worthy because I don't look that way.
I think you should check those comments again, because first of all, this is
that's exactly what I want to go back and read those comments again. That sounds fun.
This is the poison of social media. Is I guarantee you, the vast majority of like 95% of the comments on the video are super positive and like, wow, that's amazing. I'm so inspired. And there's probably like 2 or 3 comments where like, show it off or whatever. And those are the ones that you're latching onto. This is what people who are making any content today on any level of any age have to deal with, is like, you are going to be dealing with essentially.
Well, we've both gone through that.
Some jokesters who are
Trolls
who are just out to like put some negativity.
But
in
I
the
would
world
say
for
I think
some
that's
reason.
different. And I'll say this because we for sure expose that, and that really is trolls. These I wouldn't say are troll. I don't even know what a troll. I know what a troll is underground, but I'm saying like this is more. I think that there really are, and maybe it is just 2 or 3 people out of 50,000, so that's great. But there are some people that are discouraged, and they're not trying to like. I'm not offended by those things, and I'm not like, and I don't really get offended, as you know, at this
But even
point.
if there's a couple, like I'm saying you're probably remembering this way harsher than it actually is. Like the reaction to the video is probably closer to what you were shooting for. And you are, because this is what humans do, you are latching on to the thing that is a big threat to your idea of this, which is natural to do. Buddy, believe me, no one knows that better than me too. Like I put out shorts as well, and like they can be overwhelmingly positive. When one person's like, "You suck," that's not modal interchange. I'm like,
but that's what I'm saying. This is not.
I failed it.
No, but this is not a you suck. This is actually, wow, you're great. Thanks a lot for discouraging me. And I'm like, it just doesn't feel good. You know what I mean?
That's it, man. I will say though, man, like I definitely with putting, again, and this is relevant whether you're putting out music or educational content or really any posting of any kind, even like gig posting or whatever. Like I turned a corner on this a couple of years ago with specifically with the things that I've been putting out with Open Studio last year, probably making shorts, where I stopped trying to make things that I thought people would like. And I started making things that were like me discovering things with people. And this actually goes, I think, hand in hand with playing. Like I played a gig last night at the beautiful Missouri Botanical Garden. It was a lovely night. It was a great gig.
Got married at that place.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, congrats. Just now?
Not yesterday. No.
Oh,
26 years ago.
Okay, great. No, but I was in the set break. I kind of realized I was like my whole shift on performing, whether that's a short or even this gig. I was thinking about this too. Is like I feel like now I'm more on the let's go on a journey together. Like I'm learning this with you, right? Like I'm kind of discovering, these like modal interchange things that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
I'm like practicing things that I am super curious about in front of you and trying to explain why I think they're so cool. And maybe we could try them like this. Maybe they work like this. Have you ever heard someone do it like this? Earth, Wind, and Fire does it like this. Like doing that kind of thing. It's like it becomes more of a discussion, and it's a lot more open and vulnerable, I think, than like, this is the shit right here, and I'm the baddest dude ever. And to me, like stopping trying to appear like I know what I'm talking about, and just go on this like, we're gonna go on this together. And it happens even as I play now and I get older, and I think like honestly, social media kind of messed me up for this for a while, but like now I've kind of come out of this, and like even if I'm taking a solo and I'm playing a gig, it's more of that like, let's see what happens here. Let's go on this journey together, as opposed to playing things that I think are going to impress. I think that whole thing is really tricky right now because also like when I say social media messed me up for this, like you don't know, sometimes you're playing a gig and it's not just the gig. Like people are recording it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's going to go up on YouTube or Instagram. Everything is live. Everything you play could be recorded, and that can really mess with you.
Yeah.
And like, that's what I'm saying. It's like right now is a really, compared to when we grew up, when we came up on the come up.
Right.
Like when so much of what we did, nobody heard. Like,
I know.
Even important things to us. I played big gigs when I was young for like, people that I respected, with people that I respected. That like 20 people heard.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I could just have that space.
Well, and just think about like if there was a live performance, even if it was a lot of people or not, and there was some recording, like those things became the things of legends. Like, do you have a cassette of that gig? I think so. Or somebody else, like, and people would talk about the gig even if they weren't there,
right?
Because it would get passed along, the information about it, and then it would be like this ethereal thing that might be somewhere, even if it was 20 people, that it builds up as a legend and then changes over time as well.
Yeah. It's really interesting, right?
Yeah. So I think that this brings up an interesting point that's very specifically related, I think, to how we could relate as a jazz musician. Because if the olden days,
here we go.
well, when we were coming up, we're almost worried more about like we want more people to hear us. like, oh, I wish I'm playing good tonight. There's only 20 people here. Now I got to do this again some other time. And hopefully this person that might be able to get me a gig here or whatever. Now anybody can put their stuff up. And look, the reality is when we say anybody can put their stuff up in millions, no, that's not the way it works. You can put up your stuff online, but it's such an echo chamber and there's just so much stuff going on that even really big name artists from yesteryear or from today, great stuff gets missed, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, it was like, oh, did you hear about this? Oh, I missed it. Oh, I got to travel up to Chicago next time they come close.
But I think, isn't this a very specific thing about jazz and a couple of other genres of music is that because it's meant to be in the room, because it's different every time it's live. This isn't like we're making lo-fi hip hop and, you know, we got to find the right Dilla groove here and then we post it. No, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, that's not how the music advances.
Right.
Music advances live in person. And it's always kind of been like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about recordings here, but like it's always been about the gigs. That's where the music really develops and really thrives. Even when recordings started, they weren't long enough to capture what was actually happening in the clubs.
It was always better live.
It was always better live.
And I think that still is the case, but it's through this different thing now of like, if you're able to put, you know, if you're a young artist coming up and you can play well and you want to like reach an audience or just do your thing or contribute your art to the world or whatever, like, yeah, you're going to be putting some energy into doing gigs, but most of these young people are not putting, I mean, first of all, there's not as many places to play. But that's actually the truth. I mean, that's a boomer thing to say, but it's just, like, that's just factual in terms of
man, I remember when I moved to New York, I studied, when I first started at the new school, I studied with this great pianist named Leanne Ledgerwood. You know Leanne?
No, I know the name.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
And she was telling me that when she first moved to New York, she got a gig in like Long Island for like a month at a club. Like it was like a club date for a month. Her trio or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she was like, that doesn't really happen anymore. This is like 2001.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So now we have 23 years of further degradation.
Yeah. But that was like a common thing. You would get like these long stretches of gigs, or you would just, there were just tons of gigs.
Right. But it's interesting because, so now young artists are, you know, kind of tailoring their thing for like an online, you know, shorts or whatever, like the medium that you can get your stuff out there. Emmett Cohen live in Emmett Cohen's place.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that with the Friday night thing. Like, you know, we're going to find a way to get our stuff out there depending upon the circumstances. And I think that's great. And I think, you know, a lot of older artists, you know, Brussels sprouted against that, bristled on that because, you know, it's like, well, back in the day, we had to pack up our amp into the, you know, yeah, exactly. But the reality is like, well, think about when we were like passing out flyers to do our Cicero's gig, trying to get 3 people to come to it, trying to beg for the gig and like the build up to that and everything. Yeah. We would have loved to play. If you could pull out a little device and like have our little crappy band play something like, come join us. Yeah. And
be amazing.
Possibly build up a following.
I would much rather do that than stand in the corner of Skinker and Delmar handing out flyers.
Right. Yeah. Hey, that was a big drug corner too, you know. What were you standing around? But we are not drug addicts or proponents of that. See, we're always living in the moment.
Anymore.
Whoa. Do you hear a bass drum?
Yeah, we're about to do the trio GPS.
Okay, cool. But yeah, we would have loved to have that, right? But then, of course, the pendulums, like, and then we talked to youngins today, the younger musicians. That's getting annoying. I'm really gonna stop.
You know what? We've already had this experiment. When we did, you'll hear it live. Remember, we had the Peter Martin bespoke bell.
Right. Don't put my name on it. It was yours too.
I know it was my idea. And about 3 bells in, the whole audience was like, "Are we still doing this?"
So what did we do? We kept dinging it.
We doubled down.
But you know, you talk to a lot of young jazz musicians, and I love like playing with them, and I've been doing more of that, which is great, and kind of seeing the world from their eyes through. But we have this commonality, this meeting point of the music, which like I think the young players are just like us. Like that hasn't changed. Like jazz musicians are weird and quirky and and like kind of obstinate and like we're gonna fight the man and we're gonna, you know,
it takes
like,
that kind of spirit. I think
it does, and that spirit's still there
for sure.
But they're very much like, oh, we wish it could be like when you guys were coming up. And I was like, I wish it was like what you guys have. Like, there's this weird kind of like, no, we want that. And I'm like, look at all that you have. Like, to be able to push your career, to be proactive about getting your music out there, to have these tools. But there's a dark side to it. There's an out of control. There's a lack of curation. There's the too much information, so you're going to get lost. And if you really want to, you know, and we see some young or youngish artists like that are not necessarily getting lost in the shuffle totally, but they're not getting as much hype as they would have in the old days, where it really was based more about your playing. I'm
Yeah.
not going to ring the bell, but that is something that has changed. Like how you appear online, how you look to a degree, and more like how you play and how you highlight the things that you do does matter more now than it used to be. Like when you get up with a Willie Aikens or even like the first time I played with, a number of different artists. And even as like I started to, Betty Carter.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you got to bring it and she's going to like knock you down a few pegs if you don't. During the gig at a big 10,000 person festival in France where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. But I'm like, oh, I'm just a little, and there's video of that. I mean, like that got me scared when somebody put it on YouTube recently, that live at Vienna, and it was like my first tour in Europe, and I'm 20 and I'm playing
Can you pull that up?
I might be able to.
Yeah.
I think so. But it was like that brought back a lot of fear and anxiety to me.
Yeah,
I would say in a good way. But like fear and anxiety is not viewed that way these days.
What about like what about the actual, not just like the culture around the playing, but what about the actual learning of the music? You know what I mean? Like what we learn.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's been a huge swing. Like when I was learning the music in the 90s, things like stride piano, like basically like all the things Emmett is all about.
Yeah.
And that whole generation actually has like really gone back to pre-bebop, like getting deeper into that, which is amazing. That was like, it wasn't really on the table for a lot of us. It was so focused on like Herbie and Kenny Kirkland and Brad Meldau and people like that like you don't hear those players playing like, anything like it was almost passe to do something like that.
Cecile and Sullivan going back and doing some things like some forgotten or never known Tin Pan Alley songs. There's a lot of
that whole thing.
Yeah.
That was not, I don't know if younger folks realize, but that like for maybe it was a specific time, but it really wasn't something that was cool. Like it wasn't something that was like the younger musicians were into. Everybody's into like Chick and Herbie and the Pentaton. I mean, I think Ethan Iverson has a great blog post on this about there's a whole generation of just like everybody's into Herbie. Like, and we're part of that. Like that's our age.
Herbie who?
I know.
Herbie Nichols.
But Herbie Nichols. No.
Herbie the Love Bug.
Herbie Hancock. But man, that has been, I think, the biggest shift.
Yeah.
Is watching the sort of like post Meldau, post Glasper influence into like throwing it way back, probably starting with Jason Moran, honestly.
Right.
Of like really looking backwards in that way for that generation. Obviously, there are people doing it in the 90s. I'm not saying there were.
But it becoming a trend.
It becoming this trend where the younger musicians like are studying people like Willie the Lion Smith and Teddy Wilson and people like this that are sort of like we started with Bud Powell and moved forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
In general. That is pretty interesting. I mean, some people started with Chick and moved forward.
I know.
Because like fusion was still this.
I was gonna say some people started with Chick like Return to Forever or even like the Electric Band.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And went forward from
Which
there.
is cool. I mean and I think people are still, it's not like fusion is dead or anything, but like you know what I mean? Like this whole trend of younger musicians really going deeper past bebop.
Yeah.
I think that's been the biggest seismic shift, at least pianistically,
that
I've seen.
I mean, I think that's probably, I would say, a productive byproduct or kind of result of having the availability of everything.
That's true.
To be able to hear it, to be able to dig deep, and to be able to like
those were records
go
that were
for
harder
like
to
a
find.
thing. Yeah, they were,
because those labels weren't around that originally made it. So like there weren't sometimes CD pressings of those kinds of artists.
And I mean, look, you could always find the stuff, but when everything is available, and then some, like all it takes is one or two people doing it in a cool way. And then you got other young players come up and be like, oh, let me check that out. And then they can like, they're not going to get distracted. I mean, of course they're going to get distracted by things. But if they go on that rabbit hole right then, it's all there. You don't have to drive into town and find the, record store. So like when you strike while the iron's hot, that kind of is rewarded with a deep dive nowadays because you can get all that stuff. Somebody mentions something, or it's like they hear Emma Cohen like on, I mean, I didn't realize how influential that series was on younger players.
Oh yeah.
because to me it felt like, I mean, I knew it was doing well and it was really well put together and he always had great guests. It was interesting.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize till later, because everybody was totally well, not everybody, but I mean, during the pandemic, like a lot of young players weren't in school. They were, doing their classes on Zoom, and then that would have been their opportunity to maybe go out and hear live music.
That's right.
But they actually started to hear and be able to keep up with like a serial version, an episodic thing, like you would go to see a local musician at a jam session or at a gig every week for the first time ever. Because before that, that wasn't happening online live. I mean, a little bit, but not like it did where it exploded. And then most young people before the pandemic weren't going out to clubs anyway, because there's not as many places to play, and because they're online and they're watching, IGers or whatever. So that kind of maybe pushed things in a kind of positive way. If you're like a young and upcoming like jazz player, to be like, oh, let me learn these standards. Willie the Lion Smith, who is that? Is that somebody I need to know? This guy knows, that sounds cool or whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
it's really interesting. It's
Yeah.
really, that part has been really fascinating.
yeah. But I still think that, and we've talked about this before, but I feel like I start to understand it more when we have these kinds of discussions. And I'd love to hear what the audience thinks about this. Please leave in the comment, like on any of this, like, because, we really appreciate, since we've been doing the longer form, I don't know if you know about this, we've switched formats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But since we've been doing that, we've been getting some great comments and just really insightful and kind of therapeutic for me in terms of like how we approach. Yeah, makes me want to go to therapy, these comments. But the idea, my brother.
Oh, he's singing.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So back in the day, the thing that has changed with going on a deep dive now, if you're a young person, you can do that, but you've got to be disciplined because you've got so many more distractions. This is the same thing everybody's dealing with, right? We still deal with this. Oh, I'm gonna go check out this, pull up the, But the thing is, when you're coming up on the come up, like that, you have to find, it's so important for you to find that distraction-free zone to develop your ears, to develop your musical taste, to develep your musical sensibility, like these fundamental things that you're going to take for the rest of your life. It's like if you want to go into, making money or being a finance person or something, at a certain point you have to learn like compounding interest, like these foundational things that musicians and athletes seem to never learn for some reason, because we're learning other things. Not to say you can't learn it later, but if you're distracted when you're learning that at the beginning, it's going to be tough for you.
You got that Betty Carter video?
I don't want to look back, Boomer. Come on, man.